If Mecca did not exist, then where did both Muhammad and the Quran come from? That's next. Now we get into really the real hard stuff. This is the stuff that gets Muslims really angry, and you'll see why. So what about Muhammad? We need to find Muhammad, right, in the 7th century. Have I not done saying that he didn't exist? How dare I say that? Well, let's see if I'm correct. What do they claim? They claim that Muhammad of Islam was the last and greatest prophet who lived in Mecca between 570 and 632 AD, and that he died in Medina in 632. He modeled Islam as the paradigm for the world. He received the Quran as the final revelation for the world. Everything we need to know about him, we can find in the Sirah of Ibn Hisham, 833. But did I say, notice that it's not 833, it's actually 1860? And that the Hadith of Al-Bukhari is from 870, but I did not tell you that it's not from 870, it's actually from the 12th to the 16th century. 300 to 600 years too late. Unfortunately, these references are all in the 9th to the 19th century, 2 to 1200 years after the fact. So is this Muhammad of Islam referred to in the 7th century, or in the place he lived, the Hijaz, or doing the things he is supported to have done? That's the question we're asking. Before finding out, we need to deal first with the name Muhammad. Remember, the word Muhammad is Muhammad, right? How many vowels are in Muhammad? 3. U-ah-ah, right? U-ah-ah. You'll see why that's significant. Let's go to the next slide. So what's in her name? Is it Muhammad or is it Mahmud? In the 7th century, in Arabic, there were no vowels. No vowels existed. That was too early. You can see on earlier, I'll show you. In fact, just hold on a minute. There were no vowels at that time, and there were no dots either. So you could not know what letters you were looking at. So therefore, in the 7th century, if there was any written reference to Muhammad, it would not be Muhammad, it would be Mahmud. Because of the fact that those vowels and the dots did not exist. There were only 16 consonants in the 7th century because it was taken from Aramaic, which is taken from Syriac, which is taken from Hebrew. The vowels were only created and added in the 8th and 9th century. So take a look at this manuscript here. These are 4 manuscripts. These are 4 manuscripts of the 4 of the 6 earliest manuscripts. There's the Ma'il manuscript you see there, and the Samarkand, and the Patrapalantis, and the Sana. Notice there are no dots and no vowels on any of those. You can all see that, right? You can all read it, right? Try to read it. Can you read it? Any Arab speakers here or Arab readers here? Anybody? Okay, can you read it? Too small, I know that. But even if you could read it, if you get close to it, you could read it as well, right? Because it needs 5 dots and 3 vowels, right? And there's no dots on any of those. Look at, there's no dots there, there's no dots, any of these. These have no dots, no vowels, and these are the earliest manuscripts. But these manuscripts are all 8th century manuscripts. Now, one of these is from the 7th century. These are the earliest manuscripts. They only begin to appear in the 8th century. This is the best one, the Topkapi manuscript, and you can see some dots are beginning to show. They're starting to introduce dots. This is the mid-8th century, but they're not the dots we use today. And there's still no vowels there. Vowels have yet to be invented. So why is that important? Well, what does the word Muhammad look like today? That's what it looks like today. Muhammad. Mim, ha, mim, dal. 4 letters with a dhamma and a fatha and a fatha, going from right to left. That little curly Q is a dhamma, that's a u. The 2 slashes are I told you you're not going to have to learn Arabic, so you're not going to have to learn Arabic. Forgive me, this is the only Arabic you're going to have to see. But all I want you to notice is the 3 vowels. Can you see the little curly Q and the 2 slashes? All right? That's what it looks like today. But these vowels did not exist in the 7th century. They were introduced in the 8th and 9th century. Therefore, this is what it would have looked like in the 7th century. Mim, ha, mim, dal. There's the mim, there's the ha, there's the mim, and there's the dal. M-H-M-D in English, all right? 4 letters. So how would you pronounce this word? Without the vowels, how would you pronounce it? Mahmud. That's how you would pronounce it. Mahmud. Well, hold on a minute. We should be looking for Mahmud, therefore, and not Muhammad. And that's where the problem is. Everybody's been looking for Muhammad. Forget about Muhammad. We need to look for Mahmud. Mahmud is what we need to, because that's the word that existed in the 7th century. Now, Mahmud, suddenly everything starts to make clear. What does Mahmud mean? Mahmud is well known. Mahmud is in Hebrew, it's in Aramaic, it's in Syriac, it's in Ugaritic, it's also in Arabic. Mahmud is not a name. It means the praised one. It means the blessed one. It means the anointed one. It also means the Messiah, the Mahmud, that everybody's still waiting for. Thus, it became a title. It was not a name, it was a title. It was first used in Ugaritic in 1400 BC. Then it was used in Hebrew in 1000 BC, and is found in the Bible 11 times in the Old Testament. The most exciting place is Song of Solomon 5:16, the altogether lovely one that Solomon's talking about, that Muslims have claimed, this is Muhammad. And I say, yes, it is, but it's not Muhammad, it's Mahmud. Get the writing correct, read it correctly. Who says it has a Dhamma, Fatha, and Fatha? There is no Arabic that early. Not in 1000 BC. It has yet to be invented. Arabic was only created about the 4th century AD. You've got to go to the Hebrew. Now, here's what's interesting. Every Hebrew scholar knows that the Muhammad that's referred to, the altogether lovely one, is known as the anointed one. Subsequently, St. Ambrose, noting what the Hebrews were noticing, said this is the Messiah that the Jews are waiting for. Well, we know who the Messiah was. The Messiah is Jesus Christ. We're waiting for him again, a second time. They're waiting for him the first time. Therefore, in the 4th century, he said the Muhammad, this in Arabic, that's also in Aramaic, that's also in Syro-Aramaic, that Muhammad is Jesus Christ. So from the 4th century on, every time you see Muhammad in Arabic, it is referring to Jesus Christ as the Messiah who is yet to come. Are you starting to see the picture? So by the time you get to the 7th century, well, let's start with the 6th century. The Jews in 523 created an inscription with this title on it, and it puts it before any one of the exilarchs. The exilarchs are the Jews who are in the diaspora. They were there in what is today Iraq, in just south of what is today Baghdad, in the city of Hira, what is today Kufa. That is where the seminaries were, the Jewish seminaries. And any one of those who was responsible for those seminaries was known as an exilarch. But before their name, they would put the title, the Muhammad, the Messiah ben Huziel, the Messiah ben Salman. 5 exilarchs in the 7th century referred to themselves as the Messiah, thinking they were the Messiah who's to come. When they died, the next one took on that title. That title was well known in Judaism. That title was well known in Christianity by the 7th century. Therefore, we should expect it all over the place, and we see it everywhere. Not Muhammad, but Mahmud. So by the 7th century, the Christians used Mahmud to refer to the returning Messiah, while the Jews used Mahmud to refer to the Messiah yet to come, used with all the 5 exilarchs. Conclusion, the Muhammad was well known in that part of the world and at that time, but it was not pronounced as Muhammad. That is how we pronounce it today, and there lies the confusion. And I want you to look at this coin. I'm going to show you this coin later on. That coin underlines everything. There is Mim Ha Mim Dal. Do you see it there? Can you see the Mim Ha Mim Dal, the 4 letters? There's no vowels above it. This was coined in 663 by Muawiyah, the caliph who controlled in Damascus and started the Umayyad Caliphate. He is well known as a Muslim, right? Every Muslim knows he was a Muslim, right? Well, there's his image right there. There's Muawiyah. What's he have in his hand? What's he have above his head? What's he have on the back side of the coin? Cross, cross, cross. How can he be a Muslim if he has a cross? Who are the ones who have crosses? Christians. He was not a Muslim, he was a Christian. Just look at the coin. Look at the evidence, folks. Coins don't lie. I've got this coin. I'm buying up all these coins, because when the Muslims find out what we found out, they're going to buy them up and melt them down. We've got to buy these coins, folks. If you have any money, get these coins. We'll get to the coins later on, but I just want to get that so you what's going on. Knowing that, let's now look at the coins. Oh, we're going to get into the coins. So let's go right into the coins and let's see what's going on, because you need to go to the coins. The coins are great. Whenever a king or a caliph or anybody who is responsible comes to power, they don't have radio, they didn't have television, they don't have the internet back then. So what is the first thing they do? They mint coins. Why? Because you put your name on the coin, you put your image on the coin, you put where the mint is from, and then you put the date. But most importantly, you put your theological or your religious denomination. So you always, if you're a Christian, you put a cross. If you're Zoroastrian, you put a fire altar. There were no pagans. We've just found that out in the last 2 months. We can't find any pagans at all in the 7th century in that part of the world. This whole thing with Jahiliyyah that the Muslims have been telling us, this period of ignorance. Jahiliyyah is the wrong word. It's there in Arabic, but it does not mean pagans. It means those you who are an unbeliever before you become a Christian. You're a Jahiliyyah. You are in ignorance. It's to do with people, not a whole group of individuals. And that's just come to light in the last 2 months. See how this is getting better and better as we go along? Yet Muslims tell us Jahiliyyah were the people that came before Muhammad. They were the people of ignorance. No, it's every Muslim was a Jahiliyyah. But here's what's interesting. We can't find any document, any reference to any people called Muslims in the 7th century. We can't find any document or any reference to any religion called Islam in the 7th century. The German scholars have known about this for over 100 years. Since 1920, they knew about this. The German scholars are way ahead of the rest of the world because they're all linguists. And they've been keeping it, capturing it, not wanting to get it into English. And finally, we've got the German scholars who are now feeding us this new material. And I won't tell you what his name is, but he is considered one of the top German scholars today. He knows 10 languages. He has chairs on 2 different institutions, one in Brussels, one in Germany. He teaches in Germany. He has a chair professor in Germany. He's also a chair professor in German. He's also a chair professor in Brussels, where he teaches only in French. And folks, what he is now telling me from all his scholars, the best scholars in the world, this is all brand new, so you're one of the first to hear about it. Can you see how this is just destroying what we now see? But look at the coins. In the 7th century and earlier, a ruler introduced the coins to announce who he was, what religion he belonged to, and where the coin was minted. Oddly around, when you look at all the mints, take a look where all the mints are. They're way up here in the north, and they're way over in the east. Notice that? They should be down here, because if Islam was the center of the power, if that's where the political power was, if that's where the caliph was living, then of course the mint should be where he is. Am I correct? There's not one mint that far south. And why do you think there are no mints in Mecca and Medina? One word: water. You have to have water. In order to have mints, you have to have people who use the coins. The people have to feed. They have to have food, right? They have to live. In order to have food, you need to have water. Bingo, it's as simple as that. Anytime Muslims ask you this, why are there no mints there? Because of one word: there's no water. No water, no people. No people, no towns. No towns, no cities. No cities, no civilization. No civilization, no history, and no coins. They're all up in the north. They're all up in what is today Syria, and Jordan, and in Lebanon, and they're all over in what is today Iraq and Iran. That's where the mints are. Surprise, surprise. Why are they up there? Because there's water up there. That's where the Tigris and Euphrates are. That's where all the literature is. Yet according to every Islamic tradition, the center of Islam, therefore, where all the caliphs ruled, was from Mecca and Medina. Most troubling, none of the coins from 630 to 661 have any reference to a man named Muhammad, any reference to anybody called Abu Bakr, no coins to a man named Umar or Uthman or Ali. If these were caliphs, why aren't they minting their own coins? Not one coin with their names on it. Oh, there are lots of coins written in Arabic, but they don't have those names on them. And every one of those coins are all from what is today Jordan and Syria and Iraq, all up in the north. Can you see how devastating this is? Now put yourself in a Muslim's shoes. How would you defend this? Where's your evidence, Muslims? You've got to have coins that show who your men are. Finally, with the reign of Muawiyah, he comes to power. He's the first one to create an entire empire, and he creates it there in Damascus. If he was a Muslim, why isn't he way down in Medina? What's he doing way up in Damascus, which is 1,200 miles further north? He's up there in Damascus, and he mints his own coins. Now, these are my coins. You're looking at my coins. Take a look at that. There's Muawiyah right there. What does he have in his hand? A cross, a cross, a cross. On the backside, another cross. It's obvious he's a Christian. He's a monophysite Christian. He's a Chalcedonian Christian. He's a Trinitarian Christian. Very clear when you look at the coins. Now, one coin he mints in 663 that I showed earlier even has the name Mimha Mimdal on it. There's the Mimha Mimdal at the bottom. There it is. So who do you think that Mimha Mimdal is? The Mahmed. Who is the Mahmed? The Messiah. Who is the Messiah? Jesus. He's announcing the name of Jesus on that coin. Let's see if this is correct. Let's continue on. How can there be the name Muhammad on a coin with crosses? It was Mahmed, and thus had to be Jesus due to the crosses on the front. Note, these coins suggest that all of the Umayyads were Christians. If you have any doubt that they were Christians, take a look. Here's an inscription that was created by Muawiyah. Now, here's what's interesting. Muawiyah comes to power in 661. He's living in Damascus, and he continues for 20 years, up to 680. He is there, but look what he's writing in. He's writing in Greek. Why would he be writing in Greek if he was an Arab? He should be an Arab, therefore he should be writing in Arabic. Because the Greek was the lingua franca of the seminaries. It was the lingua franca for the theology of that time. That's why he's writing in Greek. And what does he write? There's his name, Mu'awiyah. What does he say? Mu'awiyah, Abdullah, the slave of God. So he's writing in Arabic, though the script is Greek, and he's saying himself as the servant of God. Name of God, Allah, is used by all the religions at that time. The Christians called God Allah, the Jews called God Allah, the Zoroastrians called God Allah, just like they do today in Christianity. That's the generic name for Allah. Just the same thing that we would call, for God, just like we say G-O-D in English. All right? So that's why it makes sense. But look what he says next. Abdullah Amir al-Mu'minin, which means the commander of the believers. What believers is he referring to? Just look at the inscription. Boing, boing, boing. There's a cross. So obviously the believers are Christian. He's a Christian. For heaven's sakes, just read the inscription. And if you're not going to call out, let the rocks cry out for you. Let the coins cry out for you. And the great thing about rock inscriptions and coins, they don't deteriorate, they don't disintegrate. They're as good today as the day they were minted and the day they were chiseled. That's why I love rocks and coins. Isn't that great? See, God knew that we were going to get into this controversy in the 21st century. God made sure those coins were there. He made sure those rock inscriptions are there so that we don't even have to ask the question. We just show the evidence. And who do you think has all the evidence? We do. We do. Now, let's continue on. Now we get into one of my favorite guys named Abd al-Malik. Abd al-Malik was the greatest of the Umayyad caliphates. He was there in Damascus again. Interesting, he's up in Damascus. He should be down in Medina if he's a Muslim, but he's not a Muslim. Nowhere does he call himself a Muslim. Nowhere does he say that he's a Muslim. But notice what he is. By that time, he controls from Spain in the west all the way to India in the east, from Turkey in the north all the way to Yemen in the south. So he has the second biggest superpower of the day. The only country, the only power that's greater than him is the Byzantines, who are Christians. But they are Trinitarian Christians. They're monophysite Christians. So what does he do? He has to pay tribute to them. And so he has to pay, there's a picture of a coin. That's a Byzantine coin. There is Heraclius with his two sons on either side. If you look carefully, you can see they have an orb with a cross on it. So they're definitely Christians. On the back side of the coin is the Byzantine cross. So the Umayyads were obliged to pay the tribute to the Byzantine using these gold solidus's. Then in 691, he mints this coin. 691. He has Heraclius with his two sons, but notice what he's done with the orbs. He's taken the cross off. This is a mockery of Byzantine Christianity. And on the backside, he's taken the cross piece off. You notice that? He's taken the crosses off the orbs and he's taken the cross piece off. So now this is a mockery. He pays tribute with these coins in 691. Justinian II, who is the Byzantine emperor, goes to war with him, loses the battle. Abd al-Malik wins the battle and immediately introduces this coin. This is the coin he introduces. There's his image there with him holding a sword. This is a victory coin, saying that I have won the battle. But notice what he writes in Arabic around the outside. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Where's my Arab speaker? Oh, he was sitting right over here. Went to the toilet. Okay, what does La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah mean? There is only one God but God. And Muhammad, the praised one, is the servant of God, right? Just say yes. Like this morning. Isn't that nice? I can just ask him what to do. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur or Muhammad. There's no Muhammad in there. Do you see any vowels in that inscription? There's no Dhamma, there's no Fatha. There were no Dhammas and Fathas in the 7th century. Therefore, why are we reading Muhammad in that? We need to read what's written. It's Muhammad. Who is he? Rasulullah. He is the servant of God. He introduces that onto the coins. That is the first time we see the Shahada. Show me the Shahada in this book here, the Quran. There is no Shahada. There is no complete Shahada in this book at all. The Quran does not have the Shahada. It's introduced by Abd al-Malik. He's attacking Byzantine Christianity. He's attacking, for there is no God. But read the inscriptions on the Dome of the Rock. The same year that he introduces that coin, he also builds the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Look at the inner ambulatories, the two inner ambulatories, and look at the inscriptions written about. That's the only original part of the building. That building has been destroyed and rebuilt 11 times. Go to the original ambulatories and read the inscriptions that are around there. And there can say not three, for God is one and he has no son. Who is that attacking? Say not three, that's attacking the Trinity. For God is one, that's attacking Jesus' divinity. And he has no son, that's attacking his sonship. It's all an attack against Jesus. For truly, God is not begotten, nor is he begotten. No, God does not beget, nor is he begotten. That's again attacking his sonship. And then it has La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Then it has the Shahada. For God is one, folks. And the Muhammad, the Messiah, the anointed one, is nothing more than the servant of God. He is not God. He is not part of the Trinity. This is an anti-Trinitarian attack against the Byzantine Trinitarian. This is basically an Arian attack. Listen, this is nothing new, folks. This has been going on since the 4th century. Arian, who is attacking the church at that time. Why do you think we had the Council of Nicaea? Athanasius, what was he arguing against? He was arguing against Arianism. In the 4th century, we're now in the 7th century. It raises its head again. But this time, not by a bishop, this time by a caliph. This time by someone who's much more important. So this is not a nobody. This is the man that controls all the land from Spain to India, from Turkey to Yemen. This is a man with huge amount of responsibility, enormous amount of authority. So when he puts the Dome of the Rock, the greatest building of its day in that time, the greatest structure of its day, built right there where the Holy Mount is, where the Messiah is to come again. Everybody's waiting for the Messiah to come to Mount Moriah. The Jews are waiting, the Christians are waiting for him to come a second time. He goes into Jerusalem and he builds it right there. He's living in Damascus. Why doesn't he build it in Damascus? This is a polemic against Christian Byzantine Christianity. Why? Because his greatest threat are the Christian Byzantines. So this is a political statement and this is a theological statement simultaneously on that building and on this coin. Now, this is in 693. Then in 696, he introduces this coin. That's my coin. I finally bought it. It cost me $1,500 to buy that coin. If you can find some, give me some money. We could buy those coins. That's a gold solar disc. And notice there's the Shahada there. There is the attacks against his divinity, against the Trinity. There you can see. And then it talks about that there is only one God but God. But then he says, for we will destroy those who are associators, those who associate any with God. Who do you think that's attacking? That's attacking us. The mushrikuns. We are the mushrikuns. The mushrikuns are anybody that elevates and commits shirk, elevates another to God. We are the mushrikuns because of what they feel we have done with Jesus Christ, elevated him to his divinity. That's all attack against Christianity. Folks, this is not Islam yet. There's nothing Islamic about this. This is an anti-Trinitarian attack against the Trinitarians. This is an internecine battle between Christians, which is still happening today. Who do you think the Jehovah's Witnesses are? They could have created that coin. That is their coin as much as it is Abdul Malik's. That attack is still happening even today. So why are we surprised that it happened in the 7th century? Conclusion, these all suggest that there was an internecine clash between different sects within Christianity. The Trinitarians versus the anti-Trinitarians, with the latter establishing its own religion at the end of the Umayyad dynasty, not now because Islam had not begun this early, in opposition to Christianity mid-8th century, which then morphed into the Islam of today during the initial 100 to 200 years of the Abbasid dynasty in the 9th and 10th century. Now, if you want to look at the coins, you need to also look at the rock inscriptions. They do not disintegrate, they do not deteriorate, and that's why they're so amazing. Note where the rock inscriptions are. They're all up here in the north, and they're all up here in the south. Those are from the 9th and 10th century. These are the 7th century. Notice, why are the rock inscriptions in the north, and why are they in the south? Because there's water. It's as simple as that. See, it all comes back to water. Do you see why everything comes back to water? And that's why you can shut down every discussion, every debate, just by saying one word, or two words, no water. That's why all the rock inscriptions are in those two areas. When you look at the rock inscriptions, the man who's done the best work is called Ilka Lindstedt. He's looked at 30 to 40,000 of these rock inscriptions, and he's looked at them primarily between 640 and 740. So he wanted to look at the Umayyad period. This is immediately after Muhammad's death, if Muhammad had been living, if there had been any. But he wanted to see if they even referenced a person named Muhammad. No reference whatsoever in any of these rock inscriptions to anybody named Muhammad at all. Or Abu Bakr, or Umar, or Uthman, or Ali. None of the caliphs. Which shows you that even the evidence from the rock inscriptions support what the coins are telling us. Prior to 690, He noticed that there was evidence of anything, there's nothing of whatsoever of Islamic on any inscriptions, except for formula, everything comes after 690. From 690 to 710, the name Muhammad starts to appear. Not Muhammad, but Muhammad. From 710 to 720, Muslim rites begin to appear, such as the pilgrimage and the prayers and the fasts. And then from 720 to 730, the names Muslim and Islam refer to a specific group, but we're now finding, and I'm going to have to change that because now we've just found from the Germans, the first reference to Muslims and Islam do not begin to appear until the 10th century. But this is in contradistinction to Christianity. However, new research suggests that these names, there I have it right there. These names do not appear until 945 AD. Conclusion, it was only in the 730s, we're well into the 8th century now and onwards, that there is evidence of popular devotion to Muhammad as a prophet and a messenger, which makes the Islamic traditions incredibly awkward. Furthermore, there is 100-year silence prior to this that indicates that Islam did not exist as a distinct religion until long after the time of Muhammad, which casts doubt on whether he had any part in starting him. But the name Muhammad does occur in other texts in the 7th century, at least purported to be the 7th century. So let's now look at them. Look at the Quran itself. Now, I don't believe this, by the way, folks. I don't believe any of these Qurans are 7th century. Why? Well, wait till we get to the Quran, you'll see why. But nonetheless, Muslims claim they're from the 7th century. When you look at the Quran internally, you notice there are only 4 references to Muhammad, not Muhammad, but Muhammad, on the earliest manuscripts. Fascinating. Moses is found 136 times. Jesus is found 93 times. Abraham is found 79 times. Pharaoh is found 74 times, suggesting that Muhammad was not very popular. And when you look at those 4 times, there it is in chapter 3, verse 144, in chapter 33, verse 40, in chapter 47, verse 2, and in chapter 48, verse 29. In every case, this is Jesus Christ. This Muhammad is the Messiah. Just read the references. You can see when you take the vowels out and go back to Muhammad, it is the Muhammad that we should expect to find in the 7th and 8th century. None of them refer to a person called Muhammad who lived in the Hijaz in Arabia, but the Muhammad. They all refer to the Muhammad. They most likely refer instead to the Blessed One, or the Anointed One, or the Praised One, as we have noted. It's a title. That is the word Muhammad means, and who could very well therefore be Jesus Christ. If this is not the prophet from Mecca at all, then Muslims cannot use the Quran to support Muhammad, the prophet's existence in the 7th century. And one of the foundations of Islam begins to fall. Well, what about the Dome of the Rock? I've talked about the Dome of Mount earlier, and you've heard me say that. There's the Dome of the Rock. Notice where the 2 green arrows are. That's the inner ambulatory. That's the only original part of the dome. It has been destroyed and rebuilt 11 times. That's the only part that was actually created in 691. And that's where the inscriptions are. And when you read the inscriptions, they're all attacks against Jesus Christ. That's where the Shahada first begins to appear. And that is all referring that the praised one is nothing more than the messenger of God, the Blessed One, who could be Jesus. The Quranic verses in these inscriptions are not the same as that which we have in the Quran today, though they're copied into the Quran later on, and are thus possibly precursors to the Quranic verses which were written later and then changed to refer to the Prophet himself. Conclusion, if correct, then Muslims cannot use the Dome of the Rock to support Muhammad's existence in the 7th century either, and another foundational pillar of Islam begins to fall even further. Now hold on a minute. Muslims will come back and say, yes, but there are lots of references to this Muhammad in the 7th century. So let's look at them. No, there are not. The many that they come up with have no reference to Muhammad in any of them. There are only 5 that have the word Muhammad in them. Not Muhammad, but Muhammad. Why? Because there's no vowels that early. So when you hear that, Muslims are imposing that onto the text, and they don't realize that Arabic does not accommodate Muhammad, not that early. So let's look at those 5. Thomas the Presbyter in 634, writing, he talks about a battle between the Romans and the Tayyaye du Mahmud. Now notice, it's Mahmud with a T. This is the Persian spelling for the praised one. And he refers to that it's in Gaza. This is a Pahlavi, the Tayyaye. They are the Lahmids that are in what is today northern Iraq, of what is today Mosul and Tikrit, fighting in Gaza, way over to the west. So therefore, this cannot be the Muhammad of Islam, because he's way up to the north and way too far to the west. He's over 1,000 to 1,200 miles too far to the north. It cannot be the Muhammad of of Islam. 636, you have a flyleaf which talks about the Arabs of Muhammad killed many Syrians in Yarmouk in Gabbatha. Look where Yarmouk is. That's way up in Jordan in Syria. Muhammad never went to Yarmouk, way too far to the north, so it's another praised one. It's more likely reference to someone who used that title to aggrandize themselves. In 660, Sabaeus refers to an Ishmaelite called Muhammad, who with 12,000 Israelites attacks the Byzantines. There is no record of any Arabs, or less, even 12,000 of them, partnering with Jews anytime in the 7th century, invading Byzantium in the 7th century. This is not only not historical, it's fraudulent from its very core. So we can throw that one out. The fourth one is probably a little better. 690, we're now at the end of the 7th century. By this time, the Dome of the Rock is well built. This is the time the Dome of the Rock is built. This is the time the coins are being introduced with the name Muhammad on it. And John of Barkeh talks about this Muhammad, this teacher, leader of the Arabs. This is the first real good reference, but still, he talks about him way up in the north, up in what is today Iraq. That's 1,000 miles too far north. And then we get John of Damascus. Now, I love John of Damascus because John of Damascus is right there in the courts of Abdul Malik. He is there in Damascus. He is part of the courts of Abdul Malik. So he is watching it happen right there. He's an eyewitness to what is going on. He then retires in 730 and goes to a monastery and writes his most famous book. But look at the title of the book. The Heresy of the Ishmaelites. Why don't we read that title? Who are the Ishmaelites? The Ishmaelites are the Arabs, the Nabatean Arabs who are from Jordan. They are the ones that trace the lineage back to Abraham through Ishmael. The Jews and the Christians also go to Abraham through Isaac. The Ishmaelites are also known as Hagarin. And notice all these Arabs refer to themselves in 5 different words. There are 5 different words they use. They use Ishmaelites because they're in the line of Ishmael. They use Hagarin because they're in the line of Hagar. They use Magre, which means people of the Hagarines, people of Hagar. They use the words Muhajirun, the people who go on a hijrah, people who go on an exodus. They're nomadic, they're always moving to place, and they name themselves, well, they don't name themselves, they're referred to as Saracens. No reference to any people called Muslims. These are all people in the line of Ishmael, they're in the line of Hagar, and they're proud of their lineage. But here's the problem. They now control the Umayyad Caliphate. They are now in Damascus. They control from Spain all the way to India, from Turkey all the way to Yemen. They are the superpower of the day. Only the Byzantines are greater. The Byzantines are Christians. The Jews are in charge of Jerusalem, but they control Jerusalem, right? And here's the difficulty. The Jews and the Christians have a prophetic line, right? Through Isaac. We know that prophetic line. We know exactly where all the prophets come from. The Jews and the Christians have a revelation, the Old and New Testament. The Ishmaelites have no prophetic line. There's no one after Ishmael. Who comes after Ishmael? Nobody. We don't know of anybody. The Jews, the Ishmaelites, and the Hagarines have no revelation. What revelation do they have? So now you are in charge of the holy place. You are in charge of Jerusalem. You control all this land. And right north of you is your greatest threat, the Christian Byzantines. So what do? You go and you build the Dome of the Rock right in the holy place of Jews and Christians. And what do? You write these inscriptions attacking Jesus, attacking his divinity, attacking the Trinity. You're an Ishmaelite. And what do you do next? You confront, and look where the Dome of the Rock is built, right where the Temple Mount is, right where the Messiah, where the Muhammad is going to return. And it's above, looking down on the Church of the Sepulchre, where all the Christians come for pilgrimage. It's looking down on the Christians, it's looking down on the Jews, and now you are an Ishmaelite. What do? You need to therefore create your own prophetic line. And if you're going to create a prophetic line, who do you think you're going to use? You're going to use the Muhammad. Because everybody's waiting for the Muhammad, right? The Jews are waiting for the Muhammad. They put that name before every one of their exilarchs. The Christians are waiting for the Muhammad to return a second time. So you say, we've got the Muhammad. But you put 3 vowels above his name. Muhammad. So here comes John of Damascus in 730, right? He comes and he writes this great reference. He writes about this, and he says, here is this Muhammad that you're talking about. So he's well into the 8th century now, and then he looks and says, this Muhammad has ludicrous doctrines, and then he starts naming them off. He talks about these books that this Muhammad has created. He refers to this book called the Cow. That's now in chapter 2 of the Quran. He talks about the book called the Women. That's in chapter 4 of the Quran. He talks about the book called the Table. That's in chapter 5 of the Quran. And then he talks the book called the Camel. That's chapter 0. There is no book called the Camel in the Quran. But I thought there was only one Quran. I thought the Quran was complete by 730, but certainly by 652, right? We're in 730, we're well into the 8th century, and there are 4 different books, all of which then are taken and put into the Quran in chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter 5, and then a chapter that doesn't even exist. This is not the Quran that we have today. Are you starting to see what's going on, folks? You have to have a prophet. Once you introduce this prophet, he has to have a book. Now you're starting to realize where we're going with all of this. Conclusion, every reference to Muhammad in the 7th century places him in Gaza or Jerusalem or Damascus or in Hira, which are all situated in Jordan and in Syria and in Iraq, all far to the north, and probably refer to another Muhammad, the praised one, probably Jesus Christ. Here are the conclusions. We won't go through them again. We've already done through. I just want to end with this one. These coins and inscriptions refer to the Christian and Jewish Muhammads who are either the Messiah yet to come, that's the Jews, for the first time, or the Messiah yet to come a second time, that's the Christians. It is that Muhammad who is then appropriated by the 7th century Ishmaelite Arabs, the Umayyads, as their prophet Muhammad, who then is introduced as Muhammad by the 8th to 9th century Abbasids as the fulfillment of the other 2. Now we're going to get into the Quran. We're going to end with this. You ready?